Hello, everyone. Once again, there might be background noise, which I'm really sorry for, but school has not started yet. And I believe that my grandson is having like a dinosaur picnic, and the dinosaurs are getting like really out of control in there. So, him and his baby sister are in there screaming and, you know, trying to keep the dinosaur population happy, I guess, and in line. I don't question things, I just roll with it. Anyway, last night I did a live over on Sweet Misery's channel. And if y'all have not seen that, it is on the community tab. And we discussed a lot of information about domestic violence geared towards women. We had a guest up on panel, and she was amazing. Like, she had a lot of information and stuff too. So if you haven't, please check that out. And we are going to be doing one geared towards information for men that are victims of domestic violence. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about domestic abuse as a transgender man. There is not many surveys, research studies, anything like that done geared towards the trans population. And that sucks. It really needs to change. Because trans in general, male or female, go through the, I hate to use the word normal, um, I guess that is what we have done though. We have normalized it. Abuses. But there's also more to it because they deal with homophobia or misgendering or not being able to access their medical care and stuff like that from their partners. And this one is going to be more about trans men, although the same does apply towards trans women. But I have another video that I'm going to do that is geared towards trans women because their abuse is a bit different than what trans men go through. Trans men deal with the masculine toxicity more than you would think that they would. And especially if they are in a relationship with a cis male, a lot of that, it's just different. So this one is about trans men, but it also has information that anybody can use. There are many similarities between domestic abuse in transgender relationships and other relationships. A number of issues must be taken into account when understanding the complicated dynamics that exist in abusive relationships with a transgender man. There is a predominant misconception that the more masculine person is in an abusive relationship is more likely to be the abuser, or that only women can be subject to domestic abuse. These preconceived notions make it more difficult for us to recognize the warning signs as well as the ways abuse manifests itself for transgender men. Domestic abuse is defined as a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. Anybody. can be a victim of domestic abuse, regardless of their gender expression, age, sex, religion, whatever. Abuse is not limited to physical violence. It involves a range of behaviors which, apart from physical and sexual violence, include the use of coercion and threats, intimidation, emotional abuse, isolation, minimizing, denying and blaming your partner, using children, using social privileges such as race and class, and subjecting your partner to economic abuse. These forms of abuse do not necessarily occur in isolation from each other, but rather they can take place simultaneously. Abusers believe they are entitled to know and control your actions and choices. Various forms of abuse are used by abusers as tactics to dominate their partner. Keep in mind that society tends to traditionally and wrongfully view only cis women as potential survivors of domestic abuse. This makes it more difficult for those in abusive relationships and society as a whole to identify abuse against transgender men. Do you feel afraid of your partner sometimes and often? Avoid talking about certain topics because you are afraid of making your partner angry. Feel that you can't do anything right. Feel that you don't meet the standards that your partner has set. Believe that you deserve to be hurt, mistreated, or abused. Think that you're the one who must be at fault all the time. Feel helpless or emotionally numb. Cry most days and nights. Does your partner humiliate you by calling you names or shouting at you? Criticize you constantly and make you feel down? Treat you so badly that you feel ashamed to talk about it to your family or friends? Ignore or belittle you for having opinions or put down your accomplishments at home, work, or in your studies? Blame you for making them act abusively? Treat you as their property rather than as an individual? Act overly jealous and possessive? Control where you go and what you do? Tell you to ask for permission before you leave the house or go anywhere? Keep you from seeing your friends or family? Monitor your Facebook account? Monitor your phone and read your messages? Limit your access to money, phone, or car? Demand to know all your passwords for all your email and social media accounts? Ask you to close your bank account? Force you to leave your job? Force you to discontinue your education? Curse at you? Force you to engage in sexual activity rather than asking for your consent? Phone frequently and harass you? Threaten to commit suicide if you leave? Threaten you physically? Threaten your friends or family to get you to do what they want? Hurt you or say he will hurt you? Punch you? Kick you? Push you? Coerce you into sexual acts you don't want to take part in? Force you to do things, sexually or otherwise, which you don't want to do? Have an unpredictable temper that scares you? The above points out warning signs of various forms of abuse, which can broadly split into three types of abuse. You may experience one or more at a time. Physical abuse. Intentional use of force to cause pain, discomfort, impairment, or injury. This can include hitting, choking, slapping, burning, shoving, restraint, using a weapon to cut, hit, or puncture you, as well as intentional interference with basic needs such as withholding food, medicine, or sleep. Sexual abuse. Any sort of non consensual sexual contact. This can include forcing you into sexual acts, intentionally passing on sexually transmitted diseases, refusing to use a form of contraception, humiliating you during sex, and taking advantage of you when you are not able to give consent. For example, if you are asleep or too drunk. Emotional abuse. Actions which aim to damage someone's self esteem, feelings, and independence. This can include verbal abuse, name calling, manipulation, isolation, threats, gaslighting, financial abuse, and intimidation. Domestic abuse in same sex male relationships, as well as in heterosexual ones, is not necessarily physical, although this is not to say that physical violence between women does not occur. Violence and abuse can also be emotional or psychological. Manipulation is a common tactic among emotionally or psychologically abusive partners, which include techniques such as lying, hiding information, using emotional blackmail, and or avoiding equal debate. An abusive partner can use these techniques to force you to do certain things, make decisions for you, help paint a distorted reality of your relationship, and or to mystify your relationship and the abuse that happens. It must be remembered that quote unquote typical types of domestic abuse, such as physical abuse, rape and sexual assault, threats, stalking, etc., can happen in all relationships, even though they are more commonly associated with abuse in heterosexual and cisgendered relationships. Domestic abuse against trans people can occur at any point in a relationship or romantic sexual encounter. However, many trans people report that abuse often emerges at the point of either coming out as trans and or at the beginning of the process of transitioning. It's important to remember that while your partner may be surprised, confused, or apprehensive at either of these times, none of these emotions is an excuse for taking away your autonomy or enacting violence against your person. Unfortunately, most trans people report encountering domestic abuse and at some point in their romantic and or sexual relationships, likely due to regressive and dehumanizing attitudes towards trans bodies, as well as other structural inequalities, gender, race, class, orientation, etc., which may affect trans people. There are expressions and dynamics of abuse that are specifically recognizable in domestic abuse against transgender men that you may be able to identify within your own relationship: transphobia, biphobia, and homophobia. An abusive partner may also use shame or guilt to prevent you from coming out as transgender. They may try to control the way you act or dress, repeatedly refusing to use your preferred pronouns, or not allowing you to express your gender in ways that make you feel comfortable is also a form of abuse. If you identify as homosexual, bisexual, or other non monosexual identity, which many trans people do, your partner may try to leverage stereotypes of dishonesty and promiscuity to discourage you from reporting his abuse behavior to the authorities should you attempt to do so. Intentionally triggering gender dysphoria. Comments designed to aggravate or trigger feelings of dysphoria where you feel discomfort or distress because there's a mismatch between your biological sex and gender identity. This includes drawing attention to parts of your body which they know you are unhappy with, or setting up situations in which they suspect your dysphoria will be triggered. Preventing access to healthcare. Preventing you from accessing medicines and health services associated with your transition and or identity is a form of abuse. Forcing sexual activity. An abusive partner may use the discomfort you may feel with your body to shame or pressure you into having sex. They may also force you to view images or videos which you are likely to find triggering, upsetting, or unpleasant. No matter what the relationship, your partner is not entitled to you sexually. Any level of coercion can be considered manipulative and abusive. Feeling guilty for not wanting sex or for not carrying out a sexual act is a sign that you are being coerced into it. The threat of outing. An abusive partner might take advantage of transphobia in society, threatening to out you as transgender without your permission. They might force you to tell your friends, family, or colleagues that you do not identify as the gender assigned to you at birth, or threaten that they will do that themselves. For example, they might say, "I'll call your parents and tell them," if they are not aware. Hiding the relationship. Unless you have both agreed to keep the relationship private, their decision to hide it could be a sign of abuse. They might act like a stranger to you in public or refuse to speak about the relationship itself and the problems within it, dismissing them as unimportant. They act the act of hiding the relationship may build an increased feeling of shame and insecurity within you. Isolation within the LGBTQIA plus community, if your partner is also part of the community. Isolation can occur if you have recently came out, if you don't have contact with your old social networks, or if you share friendship groups with your partner. If you share all your friends with an abusive partner, it can become easier for them to dictate your involvement in your social circles and in the community at large, at the point at which they could dangerously isolate you from the rest of society. An abusive partner may try to marginalize you within your social group, making you dependent on their presence in social situations. They might also express annoyance at your presence in front of other people. If the abusive partner is better known in the LGBTQIA plus community, they may leverage their position or status to try and influence what others think of you. They may also use this to make you feel inadequate or marginalized within the LGBTQIA plus community, tell you that they know best because they have a more established role in the community, and subsequently make decisions for both of you. Self harm in order to manipulate your emotions. A partner who threatens to hurt themselves in front of you is subjecting you to an abusive action which could make you feel guilty, insecure, and scared. Though the act of self harm and abusive partner can make you feel as though you are responsible for their health and that it is therefore somehow your fault when they self harm and that you influence whether they self harm or not. By threatening to hurt themselves, your partner may be trying to force you to stay in a relationship. Acts of self harm may establish a strong sense of fear in you. You may start to fear your own physical safety because you worry that the acts of violence they are inflicting on themselves could one day be targeting you. Self pity, paint themselves as a victim. An abusive partner may portray or believe themselves to be the victim and attempt to use this to manipulate your behavior. They may leverage their experience of discrimination or abuse and their self pity in order to draw attention away from your needs and the abuse that they are subjecting you within the relationship, and instead making you feel like you need to care for them. This may cause you to feel guilty if they express that you are not caring for them properly, despite the fact that you may be offering a lot of care while they rarely offer you the same level of care in return. Recognizing that you are in an abusive relationship is never an easy process, It is important to remember that you are the only person who has the opportunity to recognize it and the right to decide how to deal with it. It is important to acknowledge that the time it takes to recognize and potentially leave an abusive relationship widely differs from relationship to relationship. It is therefore important to remember that others should not and have no right to judge you for your journey on identifying and dealing with abuse within your relationship. Transgender men are less likely to acknowledge abuse because the experience of domestic abuse is strongly tied to women and other feminine of center identities. Admitting that a partner is being abusive may feel like you are undermining your identity as a man. Abusers may use language which plays on these fears to convince you that you are not man enough or that you are blowing things out of proportion. It is important to remember that people of all genders and gender expressions can experience abuse and face the traumatic emotions that result from it. Transgender men who come out or begin transition may face abuse similar to misogynist abuse of women in relationships, particularly to do with the control or punishment for the ways in which they dress or act. This abuse can be physical, verbal, emotional, or sexual and is often extremely distressing because it not only dehumanizes you but also demonstrates contempt for your gender identity and the ways you choose to express that. In some situations, abusers may pretend that their controlling behaviors are for your own good or that they are attempting to stop you from attracting transphobic abuse from outside the relationship. Gaslighting is a common phrase used to describe a manipulative behavior where the abusive partner slowly starts to overwrite their partner's reality. They may do the following among other things: accuse the partner of misremembering events, withhold factual information, replace factual information with false information, claim that the partner is overreacting, twist the partner's words as if they were supposed to mean something different. These behaviors can slowly erode your ability to trust yourself and your judgments. Gaslighting differs from other manipulative methods because it can only not only lead to a change in your behavior, but also jeopardize your own personality. By using manipulative behaviors such as the ones outlined above, the abusive partner ensures that you can no longer be independent and that you start to question your own credibility and doubt yourself. If you have been gaslighted by your partner, you may feel as though you are hypersensitive, unreasonable, and unreliable. You may also experience feelings of anxiety and confusion to the point that you don't feel like you can trust your own judgment or memory anymore. It is important to remember that this is a result of abusive behavior by your partner and that you are neither being unreasonable nor are you to blame. The context of gaslighting in a relationship as a transgender man may differ in some instances from that in a cisgender relationship due to the societal transphobia, gender norms, and other forms of discrimination with cisgendered couples may not face. Transgender people in general often face challenges dating and forming relationships due to the societal transphobia both inside and outside of the LGBTQIA plus spaces. This may make it more challenging to leave an abusive relationship, particularly if leaving that relationship means you have no alternative except to return to a living situation where you would be facing transphobia and or other kinds of abuse. It can at times be difficult to find men-only services which support transgender men leaving abusive situations. Abusers may use knowledge of police abuse or other structural manifestations of transphobia outside of your relationship to discourage you from leaving or reporting. Transgender people in particular may feel uncomfortable accessing services where there exists a possibility of being misgendered by police or health providers. This is compounded by the fact that it can be difficult to find trans inclusive services locally who support victims of domestic violence. The situation is improving in many countries, but it can be helpful to know that there are services online who can give you some support anonymously. Please have a look at the list of the organizations that I will be posting on my community tab and reach out to any of them if you are in a domestic violence situation. Have a good day, everybody.